Okay, hi everybody. So this is now workshop number 15, which is the night of the 11th of Cheshvan. And we're going to start now part 2 in our study of Likutei Moharan Torah Aleph, the very first Torah in all of Likutei Moharan. And I think it's worth kind of doing a quick review. That might be a little bit useful because some of these concepts are pretty deep. And it can be easy to sort of forget from one week to the next. So, oh yeah, right. If you don't want to use the notes that come with the class, you can go online. If it's handy for you to do that, go to Sefaria, and from Sefaria choose the Chassidut link, and from Chassidut page down a ways, you'll see a section on Breslov. Go to Likutei Moharan, go to the first Torah, click on that, and then you have online, and you don't need the notes because we're just going to pretty well stick to Likutei Moharan for now as much as we can, and not go off into all kinds of other places because it can overly complicate things, I think. So you can go online and follow online, and if you want, and if you don't want, you want to follow with the notes. Thanks, Ari. You can just follow with the notes, and then you can write down things so you can hopefully remember and review. All right. So what have we covered so far? Tonight is the Hillel of Rachel Meno. Well, that's really awesome. Or just posted that. That's really cool. I was wondering why actually somebody posted something on one of the other chat groups. There's a big book I saw, this massive thick book like this on Inyanim regarding Rachel Meno. I was like, wow, that's anyway. So okay, good. Yard site of Rachel Meno. We should light a yard site candle tonight for that. And hopefully we'll give her an aliyah in her neshama. I don't know how much of a neshama an aliyah she needs, but anyway, it might be good also to say so for her tonight in our class. By the way, if any of you ever desire to want to sponsor a workshop for a given time, either one or a series for whatever purposes, for Shlema for people, or for Iluat Nishmat of whomever, or whatever, you can get a hold of me. We can discuss that. All right, that's it. Now we go just jump back into our class. Likutei Moharan number 1, the Torah Aleph, discusses this quality of chen. Remember, chen, chet, nun, sofit. It's the 2 simple letters, and the question is, what controls whether the Jewish people have this quality or whether they don't have it? Chas v'shalom. And the answer that Rabbi Nachman gives is very straightforward. He says everything is all around the learning of Torah. If we learn Torah koach, he says that a number of times, not just Torah in a general sense, but Torah koach, then, in other words, you have to put some Mesirut Nefesh into it. Then this quality of chen, meaning that you have favor in the eyes of others, specifically Hashem, number 1, and even people down here, and actually, interestingly, even with respect to Malachim. We didn't mention this last week, but it's clearly spelled out in this week's Parsha that we see that Avram says to the Malachim that visited him, he says exactly the same thing. He said, if I found favor in your eyes. So not just Hashem and not just man, but even Malachim, that if we have this quality of chen, then our prayers and our requests are going to be much more readily answered favorably, which is like, well, who wouldn't want that? So that's what we began to cover, and we learned last week the inyan of the chet, right? So basically, Rabbi Nachman takes the word chen and he breaks it down into 2 letters, the chet and the nun. And he discusses how learning Torah gives us the inyan of the chet, which was the chokhmah, right? Looking into everything, seeing the seichel and the chokhmah that is in everything. And that's what last class was about. And now this class, we're going to go on and we're going to continue with what Rabbi Nachman is teaching here in Torah Aleph. And his point is, now let's focus on the nun, because one aspect is having the chet, having chokhmah, looking at the seichel that is in everything, but we learn that seichel is a huge light. It's a very, very strong, powerful light, like the light of the sun, like the light of the shemesh, and that's blinding. You can't look at the sun. So we ended last class by this very, very dilemma, which was now look on your page, or if you're online, it's probably like I don't know which paragraph it is, but the second or third or fourth paragraph there. It's a paragraph that begins with ach, if you're online, and if you're not online and you just look on the piece of paper, you'll see Likutei Moharan Aleph, beginning with the word ach. So let's read that together. By the way, I put in the top of this that same Gemara from Chullin that we started this whole thing about the sun and the moon being created as equal lights, and then the moon just happening to point out to Hashem that, by the way, is it really shaykh for two kings to share one crown? And Hashem says, good, that's a good point. I never thought about that. So you go ahead and diminish yourself. And so this whole Torah Aleph, at least in a great part, is really a perush on this particular Gemara. And so I put it back in the top, so if you want to refer to it, because this is what it's all about. It's all about the sun and the moon, and how we are able to facilitate, in a sense, getting the sun and the moon back together again, so the lights are the same, and there's not a diminishment one vis-a-vis the other. Okay, that's enough of that introduction. That's a long-winded introduction, almost 10 minutes worth. Okay. So now we're going to start reading. Mechamad she'or hasechu. I need my other glasses. Since the light of the seichel, meaning divine chokhmah, supernal intelligence, is such a great light, it's a powerful light. There's no way, it's impossible to merit it, to receive it, to acquire it. Ki im alidei bechinat nun, except through the attribute of nun. So if we don't have nun, if we just have the chet of chen, and we've learned to quote, we think we can acquire chokhmah on its own without the nun, we're wrong, we're deceived, and we don't have the full picture. So it's wonderful to look into the seichel of everything, and to look at Torah, and to try to steig away and all this great stuff. But what he's telling us here is the real true light, which is like the light of the sun, is blinding, and you cannot receive it. Bichlal, no matter what you try to do, unless you make sure that you also have the attribute of the nun. So let's now learn that. Shuhu bechinat malchut. The nun is like the sphere of malchut. And just a quick, sometimes it's nice to have a little picture of the 10 sphirot. If you don't have a picture somewhere in your house, you don't have them in your mind, it's good to learn them. But at the very top, you have Keter, and then you have these three mochin. You have Chokhmah and Bina, and sometimes you have Das in there as well, which is like the union of Chokhmah and Bina. And then as you work your way down, you have these 6 sphirot, which are connected with, quote, the body, which are Chesed and Gevurah and Tiferet, in the upper body, the arms in the upper body as they correspond to man. And then in the lower part of the body, you have Netzach Hol, which is the legs, and then you have Yesod, which is the bris, and then below that, the fun. So that's a set of 6. And the very bottom of all the 10, you have this lone sphere at the very bottom of the whole thing called Malchut. So this is what he's talking about here. He says that the nun is the aspect of Malchut. And it means specifically the sphere of Malchut, and how that sphere emanates its light, or how it functions in the upper worlds all the way down to the lower worlds. And we'll try to do our best to explain it. Now he's going to prove to us that the nun is in fact an aspect of the sphere of Malchut. By the way, Malchut, what does it mean? Malchut means kingship, it means governance. So we have a quotation here from Tehillim, and this is what the full pasuk I put into where there's square brackets. It's what I added to the text so that you have the whole pasuk. What's not in square brackets is just the part that's in Likutei Moharan. So Rabbi Nachman just wrote the words Lifnei Shemesh Yinon Shemo. He just wrote those 4 words. But in order to understand the whole pasuk, I added the the words before the pasuk and the words at the beginning of the pasuk and the words at the end of the pasuk, so you see the whole thing. And instead of having a separate entry in our notes just for that pasuk alone. So let's read the whole pasuk. Yehi shemo liolam, lifnei shemesh yinon shemo, vit baruchu bo, kol goyim yashruhu. So we could translate it in different ways. We'll translate it like this, and it's referring to Mashiach. And specifically, it's referring to Shlomo, the son of David, but ultimately it's referring to the one who would also become in the end of time, in the end of days, the Mashiach ben David. Even Shlomo, he was ben David. He was a Mashiach ben David because he was literally ben David. So this is a statement about ben David, Mashiach ben David. Originally Shlomo, eventually the one that we normally just call Mashiach. Yehi shemo le'olam. May his name, may his reputation, may his fame be eternal, be forever. Lifnei shemesh yinon shemo. Before the sun, his name shall be Yinon, which doesn't make a lot of sense yet. We're going to have to explain what it means. But in the normal sense of the phrase, it means in the presence of the sun, or as long as the sun shines. That's how we could understand Lifnei shemesh. Before the sun, in the presence of the sun, i.e., as long as the sun is shining, may his name be expanded, may his name be glorified, may his name be magnified and increased. That's really what the word Yinon means. Vit baruchu vo, and may they all be blessed in him. Kol hagoyim, all the nations, yashruhu, may they make him happy. Okay, so we don't want to focus on the beginning and the end. We just want to focus on the words that Rabbi Nachman chose to put in this Torah. Lifnei shemesh yinon shemo. Now, first of all, let's go on with what it says. Perush Rashi, Lashon Malchut. What is he saying? What is Lashon Malchut? He's saying the word yinon is the language of Malchut. Now, where does Rashi know this from? How does Rashi know that the word yinon, which, by the way, is rooted in the word nun, obviously, right? The word Yinon actually comes from the letter Nun. There's a Yud and then a Nun. So Rashi tells us that word is hinting at us that it has something to do with Malchut. In other words, may the king Mashiach, may he continue to rule and expand his rulership as long as the sun shines. That's Yinon, and that's Malchut. And so that's what Rashi is telling us on a very just, pashut level. So far we've just seen that the word yinon, which is the same as rooted in the word nun or the letter nun, means malchut. This is exactly what Rashi says. So it's nothing that you say, oh well, where did Rabbi Nachman get this from? This is explicit Rashi. He tells us that this word yinon or the letter nun is the aspect of malchut. Now, if you think about the word Yinon, meaning his name shall be Yinon, there's actually another way that this pasuk can be understood, and it's actually mentioned this way in the Gemara, that, in other words, one of the names of Mashiach will be Yinon. Because that's what it says, Yinon Shemo. His name will be Yinon. So the Mashiach has many different names, all these mystical names, not literally that they're going to call him Yinon, but that there's a certain aspect of Mashiach's name which is related to this aspect of Yinon. What is it? So the word Yinon is made up of a Yud and the spelling of the letter Nun, right? Nun, Vav, Nun, Sophie. So you take the word Yinun and break it off into these two aspects, right? A Yud and then the three letters that spell Nun. So the Yud, which we learned last week, Yud is symbolic of the sphere Chokhmah. We don't want to get into how we all know this. This is known. This is straightforward throughout the writings, the Kabbalistic writings, that the letter Yud is an aspect of Chokhmah. So, in a sense, Yinon means that you have the Yud, which symbolizes Chokhmah, and you have the Nun, which symbolizes Malchut. So you have these two together. You have the Yud, which is at the very top, which is Chokhmah, and then you have Nun, which is at the very bottom, which is Malchut. And Mashiach, his name incorporates both aspects. Let's read that's what it means when the Gemara says that his name will be Ginon. It means that his whole fame and reputation and his reputation will all be as a result of the fact that he's connected the Yud, which is Chokhmah, or which we learned last week, can also be understood as the Chet of chen. He's connected that Yud to the Nun, to Malchut, to Chokhmah and Malchut, and he's brought the two of them together. That's what it means. On the symbolic, mystical level, that's what this teaching means. All right. Any questions before we go to the next little paragraph? And if you don't understand what I'm saying, ask. I don't want to lose anybody. Okay. All right, so we go on. V'zeh b'chinat levana. This is also, he says, the aspect of the moon. So before we learned the chokhmah, which now we also learn is also the letter yud, is the sun. And now we're learning that the nun, or the sphere of malchut, is the aspect of the moon. Hope I said that right. Didn't get mixed up. And by the way, I didn't really quite explain to you why the yud is also symbolic of chokhmah. And it's because the yud is the first letter in Hashem's name, which is yud, hey, and above, and hey. And the yud, which is chokhmah, symbolized by the chokhmah. The first hey is bina. So there's yud and the hey, which is chokhmah and bina. They have to go together. That's the mochim in this aspect called das. And then you have the last two letters, the vav, and the final hey. The vav is a gematria for 6, which are these 6 attributes that we talked about from Pesach, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach Hod, and Yesod. Those are the 6. That's the vav. And then the final hey is malchut. So you see that Hashem's name, Yud K and Vav K, when they're all put together, is really the entire set of spheres. And that's why Yud, right there, which we told us Yud was Chokhmah, that's where that comes from. All right, so let's go back to the second paragraph. So even as the sphere of Chokhmah is like the sun, so too at the opposite end of the spectrum, the sphere of Malchut is the aspect of the moon. Ki halavana in la or me'atzma. The moon, like the physical moon, doesn't have any light in of itself. The moon is a reflective body. It has dust, I guess, on the surface, moon dust, which is very reflective, and so it's like a mirror, and it just simply reflects the light of the sun. There's no inherent light that emanates from the moon in and of itself. If somebody turned the sun off, then you wouldn't see the moon. There's not a source of light. It just only has light because it received whatever it can receive from the sun. Says that in Zohar in a couple places. The point, he's not teaching us a lesson about the planets, the sun, the moon, and so on. He's teaching us a lesson about ourselves. He's trying to teach us what it means to be an aspect of Nun. To be like the aspect of Nun means that we have to become like an aspect of the moon. What do we need to say about ourselves? We need to say about ourselves that I have no light in and of myself. That's what he's saying. Ki halavana ein laor me'atzma. There's no light in and of itself in a moon. And what he's trying to tell us here that we have to take upon ourselves this attribute. If we expect to be able to receive the light of the sun, which is the real seichel of Hashem, we have to make ourselves like the moon, like the letter Nun. What does it mean? We have to say, I have no light in and of myself. There's nothing here. I have no seichel. I have no intelligence. I have nothing. I'm an empty vessel. All I can do possibly might be to reflect the light of the sun at best. That's what we have to say about ourselves. V'zehu b'chinat malchut. That's what malchut means, by the way. Now we understand a little bit about malchut. Why was David HaMelech such a great king? What was it that enabled him to be the Mashiach? Because he was somebody who always said, I'm nothing. I'm nothing. I'm ani. I'm a complete poor person. I have nothing in and of myself. All of his tehillim are filled with these statements about, tefillah lani, this prayer of this poor destitute person. There's nothing here. I need tolad loish. I'm a worm. I'm not even a man. This is the way that the David HaMelech looked at himself. he was willing always to receive disgrace and embarrassments and all kinds of busha and humiliation all the time, because he was the aspect of malchut, and because he was willing to empty himself completely and literally say, I don't have any light in and of myself, that enabled him to be and to merit the sphere of malchut. So actually, if you go through all this sphere, you'll see, at least from the 7 lower ones, chesed and gvur, all the way down to malchut, they're always associated with a certain great patriarch. Like chesed is associated with Avraham, which we always know that, right? Chesed is given to Avraham. He's the ish chesed. And Yitzhak is associated with gevura. And Yaakov is associated with tiferet. And Moshe Rabbeinu is associated with netzach. And Aaron, his brother, is associated with hod. Yosef Atzadik is associated with Yesod, right? We know that from the great story of all the temptations he resisted with the wife of Potiphar over and over and over again. And Malchut is David HaMelech. So we're beginning to understand a little bit, why is David HaMelech this attribute of Malchut? Because he is nothing. We think he's great. He is. He's only great because he made himself nothing. He made himself ain, nothing. I'm nothing. He was completely, he mivatel himself. He canceled out himself. And he said, I don't have any light. Going on, delayed la migarma klum. That's an expression from the Zohar. So that's Aramaic. It's the same thing he just said. There is not in it anything in and of itself. That's the essence of Malchut. See, all the other spheres, they have light in and of themselves. A sphere, think of a sphere like a cup with something in it. Here I have a cup of water. A sphere is like that. A sphere is a vessel, but also what's inside the vessel. A certain amount of light, certain kind of light, certain quality of light. And obviously the vessel has to hold that light. And each of the different spheres has a different kind of light. Like sphere of chesed has a light of chesed, and the sphere of gevurah has the light of gevurah in it. You have to have all these different things working together. They're all part of Hashem's oneness. But what's in Malchut? What kind of light is in the sphere of Malchut? That's what he's telling us here. There's nothing. It's a vessel without any inherent light in it at all. It's a very unique sphere. There's no other sphere like this. All the other spheres have a certain light within them. Malchut has no light. That's why it's like the moon. There's nothing there. And that's why when we say like the Kiddush Levana, what are we doing? We're going out there and we're waiting to see that first little teeny bit of sliver of light after the new moon was completely dark. What are we so excited about? We sing, we dance out there, we jump around. What's the point? What are we doing? Hopefully now you begin to understand a little bit about what we're doing. We're looking forward to this light coming from the sun that finally enters into the sphere of Malchut, and finally that sphere of Malchut begins to shine just a little bit, which is really David HaMelech. And that's why the whole Kiddush Levana is it's all about the reign and the looking forward to the reign of David HaMelech, because he's the sphere of Malchut, which is Nun. All right. So all these things, different ways of saying the same thing. Let's go on. Rather, min hachet. The chet there is the letter chet. Chet, I said chet. It's chet. Okay, so what is he saying? The only light that the sphere of Malchut, i.e. the moon, i.e. the letter Nun, the only light those things, which is all the same thing, can receive and can contain, and can have, is only the light that it receives from the chet, the letter chet, shehi b'chinat chokhmah, which we learned last time. The chet is the aspect of chokhmah, which is the sphere of chokhmah at the very top, which we just said also is another way looked at. It's also the yud in Hashem's name. So Malchut brings down all the light. Without Malchut functioning, you know what there is down here in this lower world? Nothing. There's no light. This is a very scary idea, but it's very true. We need to understand it. Because all the upper lights in the upper world, the world of Atzilut, where all these spheres are, they only allow the light in them to come down to the next lower world, say the world of Bria, and then the next lower world, the world of Yetzirah, and the next lower world, this world of Asiya, only if there's light in Malchut, in the world of Atzilut, at the very top. And there's not any light in there in and of itself. So the only way for light to be propagated down the system is for light to be in Malchut. If there's no light in Malchut, then there's just darkness all the way down. So we have to be very, very careful the way we can facilitate the bringing down of divine light, the divine seichel into these lower worlds. The lowest of all the worlds where we live in is to learn Torah b'koach. This is what Rabbi Nachman is telling us. If we don't learn Torah b'koach and we don't make ourselves into nothing, which is the aspect of the noon or malchut or the moon, then there'll never be light brought down to the lower world. And that's a terrible thing that we have to think about. We don't want to be part of that. We want to make sure that we bring light down to the lower worlds. Bichinat shemesh canal, like this is the aspect of the shemesh which we spoke about already earlier. Now we get to the real point of it all, and he spells it out clearly for us in case we hadn't got it yet. He brings down a pasuk from Yeshayahu in chapter 30, where it says, "Or halavana or hachama." Eventually, in the days of Mashiach, the light of the moon will be like the light of the sun. What on earth does that even mean? Well, now we begin to understand, I think, a little bit about what it says at the top of the page in the Gemara and Chullin. Because in the very beginning, what was there? I want to read a little bit from the Kiddush Levana, which we just did a couple of days ago. It's in the paragraph that started. I didn't put this in your notes. I apologize for that. I just thought about it after I was all done. This is the paragraph that starts off with Tanadvei Rabbi Yishmael. This was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael. Let's go down to the prayer contained in it. Bihi ratzon mifanecha Shem Elokai, Elokai ve'Elokei avotai. Okay, may be your will, God, Shem, my God, the God of my fathers, lemalot tegimat halavana, that you may fill up the blemish in the moon. This is exactly what we're talking about. V'lo ba shum mute, and so there will no longer be in it any diminishment, because we learned from this Gemara in Chullin that in the very beginning there was no diminishment of the moon. The moon was as bright as the sun. And then Hashem says, "Go and diminish yourself." Vihi or halavanak or hachama. That's exactly what we just finished quoting in Likutei Moharan. May the light of the moon be like the light of the sun. So, and it goes on, and the very end of this little prayer says, "V'kayim banu mikra shkatuv uvikshu et Hashem Elohehem vet David malkam." And it mentions David. Now we know why it mentions David, right? So the pasuk is translated as, "They will search, they will seek. They will seek Hashem, their God, and David, their king." Doesn't mean David, their king, the David that lived 3,000 years ago. It means Mashiach. So the time in the future, we hope, is not far off when the light of the moon will be like the light of the sun. What that means is that what happened that's discussed here at the very top of the page in Chullin chapter in page 60, when the light of the sun and the light of the moon were the same, and Hashem said, "Moon, you have to diminish yourself," that has to be restored. There will be a time again when the light of the moon and the light of the sun will be the exact same. Doesn't mean physically the light of the moon and the light of the sun. You see, these are people, they don't understand what Hazal does not give us astronomical lessons that don't make a lot of sense. What they're telling us is spiritual deep truths that do make sense when you understand what they're talking about. He's saying that in order for the light of the moon and the light of the sun to be equal, there has to be yichud. And when Hashem said to the moon, koach, you need to diminish yourself, what Hashem said was, this entire world will begin without yichud between the sun and the moon. And the whole purpose of creation is to bring back that yichud. so that there will be yichud, there will be unity, that there will be oneness. Unity. There's no other way to translate yichud except what you know it means on a physical level. But if you're a husband and a wife, when they have intimacy, that's called yichud. So it's the same idea between chokhmah, which is at the very top of everything, and malchut, which is the bottom of everything, which we said that's ye known. That's what it says, that eventually Mashiach's name will be known as ye known. That will be his name. What does it mean? It means that, we said it earlier, so that he will bring together chokhmah, the yud, and nun, malchut, and bring them together in yichud, in togetherness. And when that happens, then there's restoration. And therefore, the light of the sun and the light of the moon are the same. Because when a husband and a wife, for example, have intimacy together, there's complete equality. There's oneness. There's not like one great light and one small light. There's oneness. And the only way that oneness is achieved, that yichud actually happens, this is exactly what we're talking about. So to get this kind of equality, there has to be yichud, or of the moon, like the or of the sun. And the only way that happens is for Mashiach primarily, and us secondarily, or maybe you could say it the other way, primarily us, and therefore Mashiach is able to do it. Don't know exactly how that works, but anyway, the point is we have to make ourselves like the letter nun. We have to make ourselves like the moon, meaning the sphere of Malchut, which has no light in and of itself, which means we have to say, I have nothing in me. I have no seichel. I have nothing. Hashem, please fill in me. And this is the aspect known as tzimtzum. There's another idea that in Kabbalah, what are we talking about? Tzimtzum. What is this tzimtzum thing? Well, it comes up all the time. In the very simplest level, tzimtzum means constriction. It means constriction. And in this very sense, we have to do that on ourselves. We have to mitzamtzem ourselves. We have to constrict ourselves. What does that mean? For ourselves to squeeze and press us? Can we just, flatten out? No, it means we have to be willing to say, I have no seichel up here. There's nothing up here. I have to become like the aspect of Malchut, like David HaMelech was. And that's tzimtzum, to restrict and to constrict our own seichel, to say there's nothing there. That's tzimtzum. And it's a huge aspect of humility and shiflu. We talked about these before, but humility and shiflu. Shiflut is the real understanding that you are really worse than everybody else. Everybody is better than you. And humility is, I believe, to be a derivative of this quality of shafel, which says, now that I really believe that everybody is much greater than I am, therefore I would be honored to help them. I would be honored to serve them. I would be honored to go out of my way to do something for them. That's humility. And that's all, both those qualities are embedded within the sphere of Malchut, which is all about the aspect of the moon, or the letter nun. Okay. So when the light of the sun, now look at those last four words again, because Rabbi Nach said, or halavanach, or hachama, the light of the moon is like the light of the sun. That creates chen. That's the chen right there. That's just another way of saying the chet combines with the nun, sofit, and creates chen. So the secret of chen is yichud between chokhmah and malchut. That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. They become equal because there's a chet and there's a nun, sofit. They're equal letters. You don't write a chet way up here and a nun down here. You write them side by side in a word. That's because they have an intimate relationship at that point because they were able to be together. And that's what we're trying to accomplish down here below in this lower world. All right, let's go on. Any questions?
What does it mean?
So my wife asked, what's the practical side of it? What's it going to mean? What it means is, number one, we have to acquire both aspects, the chet and the nun. The chet, we have to learn Torah b'koach, means we have to go out of our way to learn Torah. When we're tired, we can talk about this a lot of other classes. Middle of the night, get up, break a sleep, and learn Torah. Instead of just schmoozing with people, pick up a sefer and learn Torah. You go to the daven mincha, you're there 5 minutes early, learn Torah. Learn Torah all day long as much as you can. that takes a lot of a certain effort. Okay. Then what is noon? Noon is to say I don't know anything. I can't come to the table thinking that I have any great sake on my own. I have to be willing to say I don't know anything. I don't know anything. I'm like, oh, what am I? I don't know anything. When you compare yourself to Hashem, you realize you're nothing. So what does it mean to acquire the aspect of noon or of the moon or of malchut? It means to realize that we're nothing. It means to realize that Hashem is everything, and compared to Him, there's nothing here. So it's bittul. We have to be bittul. We have to realize that to constrict ourselves and not to make a big deal about ourselves. And it's the opposite of kavod. Right? Kavod is in keter, very, very top of everything. And so malchut is the opposite of that. So you want to bottom line, shiflut and humility. Here, what it really comes down to. Okay, let's go on. Next paragraph. Somebody who doesn't connect himself to the seichel and to the chokhmah and to the life forces and everything, which is what we said last week has to happen in order to acquire the chen of chen. Esav. Oh, so now we learn about Esav. We're going to talk a little bit about Esav because last week we talked about Yaakov. Yaakov is like the sun. Why? Because he looked into everything to see how he could serve Hashem better through it, and how everything he could use to draw himself close to Hashem. And Esav is just the opposite. Esav is not interested whatsoever in learning how to serve Hashem. He wants to use everything only for its gashmistic purposes. Shebiza et bechora. He despised his bechora. Moshe Katuv in Bereshit chapter 25, but vayiviz Esav et habechora. That's what the pasuk says. He quote sold it. We didn't. Yeah, he did. He sold it to Yaakov for a pot of beans or whatever it was, right? Because the pasuk says vayiviz. He really disregarded it. He had no use for it whatsoever. He completely hated it. What did he hate about the Bechorah, this aspect of the firstborn? Because that aspect is the aspect of kahuna. That's an aspect of somebody who is a Kohen. In the old days, the Kohen was the Bechor. He was the firstborn. He had this aspect of the Kohen. What does that mean? It means, what does a Kohen do? A Kohen takes a korban and he has to have a certain machshava. If he doesn't have the right machshava, he can ruin the whole thing, right? So he has to have the right machshava to raise the sparks of the kedusha that's in all these various korbanot and restore them to their upper place where they originally came from, the higher worlds. If he doesn't have that, then there's nothing going on. So, in other words, what is a Kohen fundamentally? He's somebody who looks into the seichel that's in everything. This is exactly what the Rabbi Nachman is teaching us here in Likutei Moharan. If we're to be like a Kohen, if we're to be an aspect of the Bechor, which now is no longer with Esav, but is with Yaakov, we have to look at the seichel that's in everything. You pick up an apple and you want to eat the apple. You don't just eat the apple and I'm hungry to eat the apple like Esav. Just give me eat that apple. No, that's an aspect of Esav. Yaakov says, oh, wait a second. I want to eat an apple. Yes, I need food. My soul needs to be in my body so I can do tikkun in this world. I have an apple here. There's sparks of kedusha in this apple. There's seichel in this apple. I'm going to make a bracha. I want to make that bracha. I'm supposed to have kavanah. And then I can raise up those holy sparks. That's Esav that's Yaakov versus Esav. And that's why I said he despised it. Esav despised it. And he says here, Dainu haseichel kanal. He despised the seichel that was in all those things. He could care less about it. All he wanted was the physical apple. Don't talk to me about spirituality inside of anything. That's what Esav said. You only want to know how you can physically benefit from something. Like it says here in Mishle, chapter 18. Lo yachpot kasio bitvuna ki im behitgalot libo. A fool he doesn't desire understanding. That's Esav. Doesn't desire understanding. Doesn't desire the seichel shebachol davar. What does he rather? All he wants to do is reveal his heart. I want this. I want this. Understand me. Understand my point of view. He's not interested in the seichel of anything. He's just interested in expressing himself, having people understand him. And this is the aspect of Esav. This is the aspect of the evil malchut. You see, for everything there's a corresponding, everything in good, there's a corresponding everything in something in evil. There's the side of the klipa and the side of kedusha. So now we have learned all about what is true on the side of kedusha. There's koach and there's bina and all these things. There's malchut. There's a malchut in the klipa as well. There's a malchut in tuma. That's on the other side. There's Yaakov, who's like all these nice, beautiful. Well, he's like Tiferes. He's the union of his father and his grandfather, of Chesed and Gevurah. But he's really all these attributes together. That's Yaakov. There's also his corresponding side on the side of evil, which is Esav. So there's just like there's Yaakov on the side of good, and there's Malchut, which is on the side of good. So there's also Esav on the side of bad, and there's also Malchut on the side of bad. What is this thing called Malchut on the side of bad? What does it mean? Let's go on. Bechinat levana de sitra achra. It's the aspect of the moon on the other side. You see, we talked about the moon, which is Malchut, Daven Melech, which is somebody who learns to acquire the true attribute of Malchut, which means he empties himself of everything. There's also a moon on the sitra achra and the forces of darkness. There's also a moon over there too. And just like the moon is an aspect, is a female aspect, so too is the moon on the sitra achra female aspect. She has a name. Her name is Lily. Like we all probably know that. She's the mother of the heir of Ra. And she's the wife, Kilu, of Esav on a spiritual level, at least of the minister of Esav, of the Nachash. They're both attributes of the Nachash. She'aleha nemar about her, about that moon says in Yeshayahu, V'chafra halavana. There'll be a time when the moon will be embarrassed, will be ashamed. Ubosha hachama, and also the same thing with the sun. Ki malach Hashem tzivakot b'Har Tzion. When Hashem reigns in Har Tzion, uvi Yerushalayim, v'neged zikinav kavod, and in the presence of all the elders, there'll be great honor and kavod. At that point, the sun and the moon will be ashamed. What sun and the moon? The sun and the moon of the Sitra Achra, meaning the spheres over there on the Sitra Achra side, meaning Malchut of the Tuma, the Malchut of Klipa. And the same thing also with the sun, which is the opposite of Esav. He's also, which is the opposite of Yaakov, which is the sun. If we have Esav, which is also the opposite of that. Those aspects will be ashamed. Because why are they going to be so ashamed? Because they conspired to destroy the world and destroy the Beit HaMikdash and to remove and to banish the Shekhinah from the world. And eventually the Shekhinah is going to be restored. And then they're going to be ashamed of what they had done. So we're getting close now to understanding a little bit more deeply about these forces of Tuma. We don't like to talk about the forces of Tuma, but they're important to understand. If you ever wanted to know what the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Ra were, or are, now you know. I do? What are they? So let's spell it out. Let's spell it out. It's obvious from the discussion that he's already had that the Yetzer Tov is the sphere of Malchut. And the Yetzer Hara is the sphere of Malchut in the Klippas, and the side of the Sitra Achra. That's the Yetzer Ra and the Yetzer Tov. Another way to put it is that the Yetzer Tov is the Shekhinah, because the Malchut, that 10th sphere, that's the Shekhinah. And her corresponding, quote, female on the side of the bad is Lily. And so she's the opposite of the Shekhinah. She's the Yetzer Hara. And what is the main essence of the Yetzer Hara anyway? At least with men, we know it's Niyuf. That's everything about Lily. It's all about Niyuf. And everything about the Shekhinah is all about Kedusha. But the complete opposite. And the fundamental aspect is this aspect of keeping your bris holy and pure and clean and in a state of tahara. That's why Yosef is that's why Yosef is called the tzaddik. He's the tzaddik because he's the sphere of Yesod. And what is Yesod? Yesod is the point of contact between the male aspects of the spheres and the female, which is the malchut. And if you don't have that bris down there properly, then you don't have proper yichud. Now, the yichud that we're talking about here, though, is a different kind of yichud. The yichud we're talking about here is that the yichud of chokhmah and the yichud with malchut. So this is amazing yichud. And different kinds of yichudim. You hear people talking about these yichudim. Ooh, these yichudim. Well, you don't have to get all spiritual and lofty and Kabbalistic, lost in the world of what are we talking about. It's we're trying to explain it in a very physical way, in a very plain way that we can understand it. So we are able to quote do yichudim, in this case that he's teaching us here, chokhmah and malchut, when we learn Torah, koach, mesirat nefesh, and we humble ourselves before Hashem and before other people, and we say I'm nothing. When we do that, then we create yichud. We create this aspect called chen, and therefore our prayers will be more readily answered. That's this whole lesson. That's what it is. So this is the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Ra. Ki Yetzer Tov Nikra. What is the Yetzer Tov called? The pasuk here in Kohelet. Tov Yeled Miskein v'Chacham Mi Melech Zakein U'Kasil Asher Lo Yada Lizaher Od. Translation of the pasuk is: better is a young, is a boy who's poor and wise. He's much better than an old king who's stupid, who doesn't know how to be careful anymore, take care of himself. So now he's going to explain what is this miskein v'chacham? Who is this poor wise boy? That's the Yetzer Tov, which he says bechinat malchut. It's the aspect of malchut. So you have to realize there's many different ways to say the same thing, right? Malchut, which is the letter nun, right? Which is the Yetzer Tov, which is the Shechina, right? Which is the aspect of David HaMelech. They're all ways of saying the same things. Don't get lost. They're all kind of equal ways of expressing the same thing. So oftentimes you go from one to the other to express a different facet, but it's really just looking at the same thing from different angles. So he's telling us here that the miskein v'chakam, that this poor wise boy is the aspect of malchut, which is the Yetzer Tov. Shehi b'chinat aniyah v'dala, is poor and poor. I don't know how to translate the two of them. Humble and poor and destitute. What is he poor and destitute? He doesn't have anything. He has no light. The late la migarma klum. He has nothing in and of himself. That's why the attribute of malchut is like somebody who's poor. And that's what Shlomo says in Kohelet, that the Yetzer Tov, which is malchut, which is the moon, is miskein v'chacham. He's miskein because he's poor. He's got nothing in and of himself, and yet he's a chacham. Where does this chokhmah come from? It comes from the attribute of chokhmah, which we started with last class. So it's kind of strange, isn't it? That it's just the opposite. I mean, it's like two opposites being put together. On one hand, he's miskein, and on the other hand, he's a chacham. How can you be both? You think somebody who's a great chacham, wow, they're not poor. No, they have to be poor. If they're not poor, then they're not really a chacham. And that's why poor, not physically poor, poor mentally, spiritually poor, the way you look at yourself. And that's what it says in, I don't know if I can find it quickly, but after the Shabbos is over, we say all these different psukim in the section called Vayitin Lecha, and it ends. I don't see it here in this book I have right here with me, but it ends with this statement from, I think it's Rabbi Yochanan, who says that the only place that you see the greatness of Hashem is where you see his humility. That's exactly this point. You want to see somebody's greatness? It's only when they're humble. If they're not humble, they're not great. They're arrogant. They're like Esau. Somebody who's truly great must be humble. Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble person in the entire universe. There'd be nobody more humble than that spirit, that soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what made him great. And that's what makes Hashem great, in a sense, Kilu, that he's so humble. So that's this aspect. That's this aspect here. Miskein, that's the poverty, that's the humility, that's the dala, and that's the aniyah, the poor, and there's nothing here. late la mi garma klum. There's nothing in and of itself in me at all. There's no light in me, and I'm nothing. There's bittul. I'm completely like Avram says in this week's parsha. Ani afav efer. I'm just dirt and ashes. There's nothing here, and yet, but yet, what was Avram Avinu? He was huge. He was great. His praise, his prayers didn't save all of Sodom and Gomorrah, but it saved Lot. And by saving Lot, he saved the holy spark of Mashiach that was hidden inside of Lot. That's the greatness of Avram's prayers. Why? Because he was I'm nothing. I'm dirt and ashes. Go back to the final words here. The only thing that's in this vessel called Malchut that gives it any light is only what it got from Chokhmah, which is what we've been talking about all. V'yetzahara, now just the opposite, Nikra Melech Zakein Uksil. So this whole pasuk that we started with here in Kohelet talks about the young boy who's poor and wise is better than an old stupid king. So now he tells us that the stupid king, the old stupid king, is the Yetzer Hara, which is the Malchut and the Kli. He said, well, you just finished telling me that that's an aspect of the moon, which is female, which is Lily. How could he be a king? Again, there's many different ways you can describe the same thing. Bechinat Malchut the Sitracha. He says it right here that it is the Malchut. It's called Malchut the king because Malchut is all about governance. It's all about governance. It's a female aspect in the sense that David HaMelech is also a female aspect, but he's also king. It's female aspect because he's the sphere of Malchut. He just received. That's what, physically speaking, a woman doesn't give out kilu during Tashmish. She receives. So this is aspect here. He'll just receive. That's the aspect of Malchut, always receive. So therefore, it's an aspect of a woman, but it's still rulership. It's still a king. And so the Yetzer Hara is a king. Sheina chafetz b'chokhmah b'seichel. Doesn't care what this old foolish king doesn't have any desire whatsoever for chokhmah or for seichel at all. That's Esau. Bechinat lo yachpotz k'sio b'tvuno, like we had up in the previous paragraph, that doesn't desire, the king, fool does not desire any understanding, rather only to reveal himself, which is Esau. Okay, so that's, I hope, we covered a lot of territories. It doesn't look like a lot of territories or small paragraphs, but you can see, as we said last time, that Rabbi Nachman's writings are incredibly dense, very compact, and it takes time to unravel it because there's a lot there. And even then, we're still not really covering everything that's in these 4 paragraphs, but just enough to give us a little bit of a taste for what's there, and hopefully we can benefit from it. So what we don't want to be is like Esau. What we do want to be is like Yaakov. So it goes back to the question. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is read the stories in Bereshit and learn from our fathers, learn from our forefathers, learn from Avraham Avinu, who's a man of chesed, learn from Yitzchak, who's a man of Gevurah. What was Yitzchak all about? Yitzchak was all bittul. He was all bittul. He didn't have any like sequel in and of himself. He did what his father did. My father had wells. Oh, they stopped up. I got to undig the wells, uncover the wells. He did nothing. He didn't innovate anything. He just did what path that Avraham. And then what do we see about the Akedah? His father says, "We're going to tie you up, and I'm going to shek you." Okay, just make sure you tie me nice and tight. I don't want to jerk, and then I'll make the whole thing puzzle. Like, what is that? That's Gevurah. That's this aspect of Simsum. We have to learn about that. Yaakov, what did he do? He learned Torah for 14 straight years before he headed off to go to Lavan. I'm not quite ready yet. He dedicated his whole life to learning from everything, even going and learning and spending all those years with Lavan. Why? So they would learn how to serve Hashem through all that mess, through all that nonsense, all the craziness. That's this aspect that we're talking about here. No matter what's going on, see the seichel, b'chol davar. So that's this aspect of chen. The chen is the chet, and the nun, which is another way of looking at it. It's the yud of Hashem's name, and the final hey, which is a whole different kind of yichud that we normally don't think about. And that's the aspect of Yinon, Shimon. That's why Mashiach is called Yinon, because he's able to create this kind of yichud. And when we're able to, that's also the unification of the sun and the moon. And there'll be a time again when that moon will be just like the light of the sun. Why? Because they're now equal. There's no one diminishing the other one. They're both equal lights. They're intimate together. And that's the aspect of chen. It comes when we learn Torah, koach, and nefesh. And it comes when we learn to diminish ourselves and say, I'm nothing. I'm nothing. Don't think about it. Don't try to seek kavod to yourself. I'm trying to make yourself look like you're something more than you are. I'm nothing. Humble, sheep fluid. Everybody's better than me. And the way to really achieve that, by the way, is doing hipodadu. It's the best way to do it. You spend an hour every night doing hipodadu. You think about the good points in other people. That's a great way to do hipodadu. But by thinking about the good points in other people, you're learning to elevate them, right? And yourself. Also look at the good points in yourself. You can't ignore that either. So when we do all of this, this is a life effort. I mean, just that's it. You spend your whole life doing this. I don't need any other Likutei Moharan to do this for the rest of my life. That's right. That's all you need to do. But there's other things to learn. But that creates chen. Chen is what allows our prayers and our bakashot to be received. So when we say a prayer, we say, Hashem, I need help with X, Y, Z, whatever it is, and we don't come to the table with this. We don't come to the table with the aspect of the chet, learning Torah koach and Mesir Nevesh. We don't come to Hashem with the aspect of noon, being humble, being shafel, thinking of nothing. Hashem, I don't understand anything. I know that everything's God. I don't understand anything. I'm nothing. When we come to Hashem with those aspects, now we have chen. Now our prayers will be answered. Okay, any final comments, questions by anybody there? Did it go? Hopefully not. Okay. Just checking the chats here. Okay. All right. Nobody wants to add anything or subtract from anything. That's okay. Have a great week. B'ezrat Hashem. If you want to give me your feedback privately, please do so on the WhatsApp. You can send me private chats. Always want to hear your feedback, whether you think that what we're doing is helpful to you and is beneficial and is the right speed and pace and so on. And so you can let me know what you think. Have a great week. B'ezrat Hashem. I'll see you next week.
Go off.